Tonight, my family will mock my car, my job, and my boyfriend again. What they don't know: I run a $190 million empire they couldn't even get hired into. My name is Cassandra, I'm 33, and to the outside world I'm invisible. Just another woman driving a beat-up Honda Civic, living in a modest townhouse, dating an art teacher who sketches in the park on weekends. That's exactly how I like it. Because what they don't see, what they've never bothered to look for, is the empire I've built behind closed doors. It started small. A laptop in my Stanford dorm room, cold pizza, Red Bull, and the kind of stubborn determination that can't be inherited or faked. Today, that dorm room idea is Fidelity Pay, a fintech platform helping small businesses stand up to banking giants. We've partnered with the UN. We're negotiating a $60 million merger with a Tokyo firm. Our current valuation? $190 million. But none of that will matter tonight. Because tonight is Christmas Eve, which means I'll sit at the polished mahogany dining table of my parents' suburban mansion, listening to my Uncle Mark joke about how even his intern drives better than me. Aunt Lydia will smile sweetly while reminding me I'm running out of time to marry someone successful. Cousin Derek will offer me a receptionist position at his father's law firm, again. They'll sip $1,000 wine and comment on how humble my Civic is, as if it's some quirky charity stunt. And I'll smile, nod, keep my empire to myself. But before we get to that, you need to understand where I came from and why I've chosen to live in their blind spot. I grew up in a 9,000 square foot house in an affluent Chicago suburb where luxury was expected and emotion was optional. My parents, Farah and Axel, are polished, powerful, and perpetually unimpressed. My mother arranges her smiles like curated art pieces. My father measures success in quarterly gains and imported watches. They taught me early that nothing, not grades, not friends, not feelings, mattered unless it came with prestige. By age 12, I was already cracking under that pressure. Then one afternoon, while hiding out in the math lab, I met Mr. Bennett, my 7th grade teacher, who noticed I wasn't just bored. I was starving for something real. He handed me a coding book, raised an eyebrow, and said, "I think you're a builder, not a performer." He was right. By high school, while my classmates were trading gossip, I was building payment apps for local bookstores and yoga studios. My parents called it a phase. My mother once said, "Tech is for nerds, Cassandra. You need to join the debate team. That's where real leaders are made." I didn't argue. I just kept coding. When I got a full scholarship to Stanford for computer science, my parents panicked. "No," my father said flatly. "You're going to Wharton. It's the path to real influence." I packed for Stanford the next week. It was there, in a cramped dorm lit by the soft blue glow of my laptop, that Fidelity Pay was born. I wanted to create something that helped the overlooked, the mom-and-pop shops, the immigrant-owned cafes, the single dads running food trucks, get access to tools usually reserved for million-dollar businesses. One professor saw what I was building. He made a call, introduced me to an early investor. The rest unfolded like a blur. Long hours, beta launches, more rejection than I can count. Then one day, we hit $150 million in valuation. Then $190 million. And still, I kept my Civic. I still grocery shop with coupons, wear hoodies to the office, and live in a 2-bedroom townhouse in Seattle. Not because I have to, but because I remember what it's like to feel like you have to prove your worth through surface-level things. I want no part of that anymore. Johnny, my boyfriend of 3 years, teaches art at a public high school. He's kind. He listens. He couldn't care less about wealth. To him, success is helping a struggling student find their voice through a paintbrush. I haven't told him the full story of Fidelity Pay. Not yet, because I needed to be sure he saw me, not the dollar signs. Now it's 6:47 p.m. I'm parked in the driveway of my parents' estate, watching luxury cars glint beneath the soft flicker of Christmas lights. The house hasn't changed, still cold, still polished, still echoing with the sound of money and silent judgment. I take a deep breath, shut off the engine, and step out of my Civic. It looks painfully out of place next to Derek's custom Porsche. Good. I walk up the steps, heels crunching softly against the snow-dusted stone path. Through the frosted glass door, I see them already seated, smiling, sipping, judging. And they have no idea what's coming. There's a kind of silence that isn't peaceful. It's sharp, loaded, like everyone's waiting for the signal to fire. That's what Christmas Eve dinner always felt like in my parents' house. The dining room hadn't changed in years. The same marble floor, the same floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the snow-covered backyard no one actually played in. A chandelier that probably cost more than my entire college education hung overhead, glittering like it was trying too hard. And at the head of the table sat my father, Axel, in a perfectly pressed shirt and a face that hadn't changed expression in 2 decades. "Cassandra," he said with a tight nod, barely looking up from his wine. "You're late." "Right on cue." I shrugged out of my coat, hung it on the back of my chair, and offered a neutral smile. "Seattle traffic. Flights. You know." Of course he didn't know. Axel hasn't driven himself anywhere since the 90s. The idea that someone his daughter's age still takes economy flights would probably make him break out in hives. I scanned the room as I sat down. Uncle Mark was already grinning, half a glass of Cabernet in. Aunt Lydia was perfectly poised, hands folded on the table, her lipstick never smudged. My cousin Derek leaned back in his chair like he owned the world, like he hadn't gotten his job through his father's connections and his wardrobe through his trust fund. Let us know where you're watching us from. And if you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. You have nothing to lose, and it will mean the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video. "Still driving that junker, Cassandra?" Uncle Mark chuckled. "My intern just picked up a BMW. Kid's 22. Laughter floated around the table, casual, effortless, like they didn't know they were slicing me open with it. "It runs fine," I replied, taking a sip of water. "But don't you work in, what was it again?" Aunt Lydia squinted like she was trying to remember the name of some off-brand detergent. "Something with apps?" "Fintech," I said. "Digital payments for small businesses." "Oh, so like Square?" Derek chimed in. "You know, I actually did some consulting for a startup like that once. If you're looking to pivot, I could talk to Dad. Might be something entry-level at the firm." He was serious. That smug, generous smile told me he thought he was doing me a favor. I smiled. "Appreciate the offer, Derek." My mother hadn't said much yet. She was watching, like always. Analyzing. Calculating. "When will you get serious, Cassandra?" she asked finally. "You're almost 35. You're still dating that art teacher?" "Johnny," I said calmly. "Yes. He teaches high school art. Kids love him." My father made a small noise in his throat, the kind he usually reserves for NPR and poorly cooked steak. "You could be with someone who understands your world," my mother said. "A partner who challenges you. Ambition attracts ambition." There it was again. Their belief that worth came in certificates and titles and LinkedIn bios. The room buzzed with casual cruelty dressed up as concern. I focused on cutting my roast duck, measuring my breaths. This was the performance they were used to. Cassandra the disappointment, Cassandra the eccentric. And then, like divine timing, my phone rang. I didn't even need to look. I knew the ringtone. "Patrice." I hit speaker. "Cassandra." Her voice came crisp and clear across the dining table. "The Tokyo merger documents are ready for final review. Legal just signed off." "Oh," and the UN called again. "They want to confirm your availability for the financial literacy panel next week. Geneva or remote?" The room froze. Forks paused midair. My mother's wine glass stopped just before her lips. Derek blinked. Aunt Lydia's smile faltered for the first time all night. "I'll do it remotely," I said, keeping my tone light. "Send me the time zones." "Will do," Patrice said. "Also, the jets grounded in San Francisco until 9 a.m. want me to rebook the crew. Hold off. I may stay through New Year's. I'll text you." "Copy that." Click. Silence. The sound that followed was almost imperceptible, a shift. Like the floor had tilted slightly beneath their feet. Like their carefully curated perception of me had sprung a leak. I looked up. "Everything okay?" Uncle Mark cleared his throat. "The UN, huh?" "Geneva," I said, stabbing a piece of asparagus. Dad was the first to recover. Of course he was. "Well," he said, dabbing his mouth with a linen napkin. We should talk about merging Fidelity Pay with our hedge fund. It could be mutually beneficial. Bring your model under our umbrella. My mother leaned forward, eyes suddenly warm. You know, Cassandra, I always believed in you. You were just unconventional. Unconventional, I repeated, nodding slowly. That's new. I thought I was just wasting my potential. Derek chuckled awkwardly. So wait, your company's really worth? About $190 million. Give or take. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Suddenly, everyone wanted to talk shop. Questions flew across the table. Aunt Lydia asked about IPOs. Uncle Mark wanted to introduce me to someone big in Dubai. Derek asked for investing tips like we were old friends. And I sat there listening, watching them scramble to rewrite the narrative in real time. They weren't proud. They were opportunistic. They didn't see me now, they saw leverage. Assets. Power. I let them talk for a few more minutes, until the main course was cleared and dessert plates clinked onto the table. Then I spoke. You know what's funny? I said, tone even. For years, I let you believe I was average. That I needed your advice, your offers, your pity. And none of you ever thought to ask what I was building. You were too busy trying to fix me. They stared, blinking. And now that there's money involved, suddenly I'm worth listening to. Suddenly I'm brilliant. Cassandra, that's not, my mother began. It is, I cut in. And it's fine. I'm not angry. Just awake. The table fell quiet. Grandma Eleanor, seated at the far end, smiled. She hadn't said much all night, but now she raised her glass and gave me the smallest, most sincere nod I'd ever seen. I liked you better in the Civic, she said. I laughed. The kind of laugh that comes from a place deep and old. And for the first time in years, I felt full, not from food, but from clarity. Later that night, I sat in my Civic, parked at the edge of the driveway, the snow falling soft and slow around me. I could see them through the tall windows, my family, still in their designer clothes, still sipping their imported wine. And I realized something. They hadn't changed, but I had. 6 months later, I had dinner with people who actually listened when I spoke. We sat outside on the rooftop of my Seattle townhouse. Me, Johnny, Grandma Eleanor, Patrice, and my 15-year-old cousin Zoe. There were mismatched chairs, fairy lights, and the smell of homemade lasagna in the air. No one was pretending to be something they weren't. No one was performing, and that alone made it the richest table I'd ever sat at. It was strange how quickly life changed after that Christmas Eve dinner. Not in the explosive way people expect when you reveal your success, but in quiet, intentional moves. The kind of change that doesn't scream. It simply settles in like it's always belonged. First came the calls. My father rang the morning after dinner. We should talk, he said. No greeting, no warmth. About the Fidelity Pay hedge fund synergy. There's real opportunity here. Opportunity. That was the word he used. Not daughter. Not pride. Not even congratulations. I listened for 30 seconds before I replied. I think it's best we keep business and family separate. But thanks. Click. My mother tried a softer angle. She sent articles on 10 CEOs who married strategically, followed by an email with the subject line, Johnny versus Cassandra's future. I didn't open it. Eventually, the silence came. Not out of understanding, but out of defeat. Once they realized they couldn't use my success as an extension of their legacy, they stopped trying to claim it. And that silence? It was golden. The first time I introduced Johnny to what I called my real world, boardrooms, equity meetings, speaking panels, he blinked a few times, let out a breath, and said, I thought your calendar was full of art supply runs and dog walks. We laughed. Then I told him the truth about the valuation, the Tokyo deal, the private jet I never used. I expected questions. Maybe fear. Maybe distance. Instead, he looked at me and said, Do you still like sketching comics on napkins when you're stressed? I nodded. Then you're still you. That was it. He didn't try to solve me or rebrand me or fit me into a box labeled high-value asset. He just stayed. The only other people who did were Patrice, Grandma Eleanor, and, unexpectedly, Zoe. It started with a text a week after Christmas. Hey Cass, Mom says I can't code BC, it's not feminine. Is that true? Unamused face. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I called her. Zoe, I said, feminine is whatever you say it is. You want to learn Python or JavaScript. That night, We spent 3 hours on Zoom building her first HTML landing page. By spring break, she had designed an e-commerce mock-up for her friend's lip gloss line. "Your parents are going to freak when they see this," I said one evening as we debugged a stubborn piece of code. She grinned. "Good." There was something powerful about watching her reclaim a part of herself her family had tried to suppress. It was like witnessing a tiny rebellion bloom in real time. Grandma Eleanor noticed, too. She called one afternoon while I was reviewing grant proposals. "That little one's got your fire," she said. "Reminds me of you at her age. Before the world told you to quiet down." I blinked. It was the closest she'd ever come to acknowledging what I'd gone through in that house. "I want to do something," I told her. "Not just for Zoe, but for kids like her. The ones who never get invited into the room." She didn't hesitate. "Do it." So I did. I assembled a small advisory board, Patrice, Zoe, a few grassroots educators. We sketched out the early vision for the Code Rising Initiative, a $20 million fund for underprivileged coders, with free laptops, mentorship, and seed capital for teen-led tech projects. Zoe would help lead the teen council. Johnny offered to design the visual storytelling campaign, using his art student sketches as part of the branding. Grandma Eleanor donated her vintage jewelry to auction off at the launch gala. And Patrice, my ride or die, made the whole machine run with a kind of brilliance that still humbles me. Every step we took was the opposite of how I'd grown up. There were no status games, no cold rooms, no strings attached. Just purpose. One rainy afternoon, while reviewing scholarship essays from Detroit, I got a call from Derek. "Hey, cousin," he said, voice coated in awkward charm. "Just wanted to check in. Been thinking about what you said over the holidays. Really eye-opening stuff." I waited. We were all caught off guard, you know? But I'd love to grab coffee. "I've got some ideas I think you'd find interesting." There it was, the pivot from judgment to opportunity. I took a breath. "Thanks, Derek. But I'm not looking for new partnerships right now." A pause. "Oh, right. Sure. Yeah, no worries." I could almost hear his brain clicking through backup plans. I added, "Zoe just got into the regional coding finals. She built an app that lets students swap and use school supplies anonymously. You should ask her about it sometime." Silence. "Wow. Cool. Didn't realize she was into that kind of thing." "She is," I said, smiling. "She's going to change the world." When I hung up, I didn't feel angry. Just free. My success had never been about showing them up. It was about unlearning the belief that I needed their approval to be whole. And now I had something better. I had peace. Not the fake kind that comes with silence in a marble house, but the kind that comes with being surrounded by people who see you before the headline. People like Johnny, who still gets paint on every pair of jeans he owns. People like Patrice, who once ordered 5 different brands of lavender tea just to find the one that helped me sleep before a keynote speech. People like Zoe, who codes with glitter on her fingernails and rage in her eyes. And Grandma Eleanor, who'd lived through enough empty performances to know the value of real love when it showed up. That night on the rooftop, Zoe clinked her soda can against my wine glass. "To weird girls who don't listen," she said. I laughed. "To building something that matters." And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was performing. I just felt home. The scent of roasted garlic and fresh basil filled the air as I stirred the risotto. Johnny hummed behind me, setting the table. Nothing fancy, just ceramic plates and a mismatched collection of forks. Fairy lights flickered along the kitchen ceiling, throwing golden shadows on the white walls. This dinner was everything my childhood ones weren't. Warm, honest, quiet in all the right ways. I looked around the table. Patrice laughed at something Zoe said, her braid bouncing as she leaned back. Zoe, now 16, wore her signature hoodie, this one red code like a girl. She had started her own blog, and just wrapped up her first speaking gig at a regional tech summit. Across from them sat Grandma Eleanor, dressed in her signature soft lavender sweater with her cane propped against the chair. She was the calm in the room, the observer, always watching with those sharp silver blue eyes. And then there was Johnny, his hands still speckled with ink from a morning spent helping his students paint murals on an underfunded school's playground walls. He smiled at me, and I smiled back, the kind that settles into your bones. This was my family now. "Speech!" Zoe shouted, raising her glass of sparkling cider. Come on, Cass, you just dropped $20 million on a nationwide coding initiative. At least pretend you're a big deal. Laughter erupted around the table. I wiped my hands on a towel, heart thudding for a second. Not from nerves, but from the deep, humbling awareness that this moment wasn't a performance. I walked to the head of the table and raised my own glass. To every girl who was told she talked too loud, dreamed too big, or sat at the wrong lunch table, I said. To every boy who was told creativity wouldn't pay the bills. To every kid who never saw someone who looked like them writing code. This fund is for you. Johnny reached for my hand under the table. And to the woman who refused to shrink, he whispered. I squeezed his fingers. The Code Rising initiative had officially launched that morning with a press release that made the rounds on tech blogs and educational journals. Forbes called it a masterclass in strategic philanthropy. TechCrunch wrote a headline that simply read, "The billionaire next door just changed the game, again." But none of that compared to Zoe's face when I told her she'd be co-chair of the Teen Advisory Board. You mean, I'm not just like a mascot? She asked, stunned. You're a leader, I told her. And you're ready. Tonight's dinner was more than a celebration. It was the answer to a question I didn't realize I'd been asking for most of my life. What does it feel like to belong without conditions? It felt like Patrice waving off the chef I'd offered to hire and saying, "Girl, I make a killer risotto. Trust me." It felt like Zoe and Johnny arguing over whether creativity should be one of the fund's core values. Spoiler, it stayed in. It felt like Grandma Eleanor passing me a small, wrapped box after dessert. "Open it," she said with a knowing smile. Inside was a worn photo of me at 12, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a used laptop, surrounded by scribbled notes and half-eaten Oreos. "I kept it," she said softly. "The night your parents said tech was low-class and took away your computer, you ran crying to me. I snapped that photo before your father stormed in. I felt my throat tighten. You were already building something back then," she continued. "I knew I couldn't stop the cold in that house. But I prayed you'd find warmth somewhere else." I looked at her, emotion caught in my chest. "You gave me more warmth than you know," I whispered. Later that evening, as we cleared plates and wiped down the table, I heard the buzz of my phone from the counter. I glanced at the screen, Mom. I let it ring out. A moment later, a text came through. "Saw the news. You've done well. We'd like to attend the next Code Rising Gala. Let us know where to send RSVPs. No, how are you? No congratulations. Just another attempt to orbit the spotlight." I showed the message to Johnny. He looked at it, then at me. "You okay?" "I am," I said, because I finally understood something. I'd spent years believing that success might one day fix what was broken with them. That maybe if I became impressive enough, rich enough, respected enough, they'd see me. But now I knew I was never invisible. I was just inconvenient to their version of success. And that was no longer my problem. Instead, I texted back, "Appreciate the message. Code Rising is for the kids, not for clout. All the best." I turned off my phone. Later, as we stood out on the rooftop deck watching the city lights flicker against the dark Seattle skyline, Johnny wrapped his arms around me from behind. "You did it," he said into my hair. "Did what?" "You built a life where love doesn't have a price tag." I leaned back into him, heart full. "And I didn't even need a BMW to get here." He laughed, warm and real. "Though we could trade in the Civic for something electric now." "Maybe," I said, "but only if it still has crank windows." Patrice, Zoe, and Grandma Eleanor came out to join us, mugs of tea in hand. The breeze was cool, but we were warm together. I looked around and realized this was what I'd been chasing all along. Not the valuation, not the press, not even the Revenge by Success dinner reveal. This, a life where I could be brilliant and messy, powerful and soft. Where I could fund futures instead of proving myself to a past. Where I was no longer someone's daughter trying to earn love. I was Cassandra, builder of empires, breaker of generational blueprints. And this was the real victory. That's my story. Some say I should have flaunted my success sooner. Others say walking away was the real win. But I've learned the best flex isn't flashy. It's quietly building what they said you never could. What about you? If your family only saw your worth in dollars, would you prove them wrong or cut them off? Comment below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Because real power doesn't brag. It builds.